The Lego Movie is one of the best animated movies of the 2010s and still holds up to this very day, with great comedy, great characters, mind-blowing animation, and an epic story. I was a huge fan of the Lego Movie as a kid. I loved this movie. It was like a godlike experience when I saw it in theaters back in 2014, and it still holds up to this very day as one of my favorite movies. But here's the question. Anyone ever heard of the Lego Scooby-Doo movies?
What is that? What the fuck is that?
Lego Scooby-Doo was a toy line based on the Scooby-Doo franchise. With this toy line came a lot of promotion on Lego's part to ensure that the theme was successful, including local mall events, 2 video games, a slew of online web shorts, and 2 direct-to-video movies as well as a TV special, which we'll be discussing today. Were these movies released solely for the purpose of corporate advertisements, or did they actually have some heart and quality storytelling to them like the Lego Movie? Well, let's find out. Starting off with what started it all, the TV special from 2015. For the first installment, Night of Terror isn't all that bad actually. I wouldn't consider it good. It's mediocre and forgettable if anything, but for what it is, it's extremely short and to the point. They only had 20 minutes for this special, so it's not like a whole bunch of fillers in this one. The main plot revolves around the gang visiting a haunted mansion and trying to solve the mystery of the mysterious Black Knight. Of course, it turns out to be some nerd guy in a costume. Classic Scooby-Doo. The criticisms I have with this movie is that the mansion in the movie is a direct clone to this Lego Scooby-Doo set that came out that year. So with this movie, I could say it's basically an ad wrapped up like it's a movie, which, to be real, is true, but it is the focus of the special, so at least it's not shoehorned into the plot. Another thing is that Velma has a crush on this black guy, and it's just kinda weird.
Be gone, fuck!
I don't know why I enjoyed this one. I was expecting the characters to be a bunch of bricks, but the Scooby Gang and even the side characters are just so nice to each other. Some more than others, but this makes the characters so likable and it feels genuine. The only unlikable character is undoubtedly the antagonist, who makes people feel sorry for him with his sob story, but is actually a manipulative prick who hates his family and tormented them for selfish reasons. Also, get used to the animation because it isn't changing anytime soon. One thing I don't like about these types of direct-to-video Lego movies is the animation. Lego Movie was inspired heavily by Lego stop-motion animation, which is why the Lego Movie looks so realistic and detailed as it is. But in these movies, there's not much to praise since the animation is just passably okay. Sure, there's some detailing to the sets, and the characters have reflections and shininess detail to them, like an actual minifigure would have, but it's not as realistic as the Lego Movie was. Characters have these weird bendable ways that they move, and it just looks so weird. Nighttime of Terrors has alright characters, a decent plot that doesn't have too much filler, and an alright and enjoyable experience. But do the next 2 movies do this one justice? So I watched Lego Scooby-Doo Haunted Hollywood, and it was off. I mean, hey, I'm not expecting greatness when the title is literally Lego Scooby-Doo Haunted Hollywood. Released in 2016, Lego Scooby-Doo Haunted Hollywood centers around the Scooby Gang winning an all-expense-paid trip to Hollywood, where they come across an old, rundown Hollywood studio called Brickton Studios. Brickton Studios used to be the most successful horror movie studio, producing a number of frightening hits and classics, but is now reduced to a shell of its former glory, making romance movies that no one really cares about, and on top of it all, the studio is on the brink of bankruptcy. The studio began to fall in hard times ever since Boris, who was a very prominent part of the studio, playing all 999 villains in all 999 of the Brickton Studios horror movies, passed away years ago. The Scooby Gang tours Brickton Studios with this guy, who I will be referring to as Tour Guide Guy. Tour Guide Guy is obsessed with the way the studio is being handled. He misses the glory days when the studio made exceptionally great horror movies, and hates the newer sitcom-y style of the studio's newer films. While touring the studio, a headless horseman comes out of nowhere and just trashes everything. It's then explained that for 6 months that the ghost of the Boris actor dude has haunted the studio. Like, come on. Really, movie? We all know how this goes at this point. Antics ensue, the villains get caught. I wouldn't got away with this shit if it wasn't for you writing kids. The end. That's the movie. I know I skipped over a lot there, but I'm really saving you guys time from this mess of a Lego movie. It has nothing that made the theatrical Lego movies great. It's just filled to the brim with just filler. For example, it takes 7 minutes to get to the start of the plot because there is a 6-minute scene of the gang catching a sea monster that has nothing to do with the plot of the movie. Why is it in the movie then? Simple. corporate advertisement. You see, this movie is really one big ad disguised as some type of movie. I know I said the same for Night of Terror, but at least the mansion was essential to the plot. But in this movie, things are just shoehorned into this movie and it's very noticeable. The movie just takes already existing LEGO Scooby-Doo sets and animates them into some kind of movie. A lot of locations in the film are just straight up LEGO Scooby-Doo set. I can understand if this was the case for just the Mystery Machine, because of course LEGO would make that into a set with it being such an iconic vehicle from the franchise. But then you have the Lighthouse set, which they incorporated into this scene in the beginning of the movie, the Scooby-Doo plane, as well as the Haunted Mansion from the last movie. They also try to hint that they've been there before, but they just shrug it off, kinda.
The Grimsley Mansion.
That's right, the Grimsley Mansion, birthplace to one of Brickton Studios' most well-known creations, the Grimsley Zombie.
Wait a minute. We've been to the Grimsley Mansion. We solved a mystery there. I don't remember any zombie. Do you, Shaggy?
Sorry, Velma. We've been to a lot of haunted houses, and they tend to run together after a while.
Mansion serves no purpose in this movie, other than using it as a plot point that trapped the monsters at the end of the movie. But other than that, it's just there. But aside from this movie being one big walking advert, another thing that ruins this movie is the characters. One thing that will always be important to me is the characters of the Scooby-Doo gang. They are likable, can be differentiated from one another, and are just iconic characters we all know and love. But with this movie, a lot of the characters just become unlikable. Mainly Fred and Daphne. For Daphne, halfway through the movie, she just becomes super obsessed with being an actress for some reason. It just comes out of nowhere. It makes her extremely annoying, especially since this is her character for almost the whole movie. With Fred, it's a very similar problem, except Fred is even worse. About halfway through the movie, the Brickton Studios manager hires the Scooby Gang to be in charge of making a romance film, following all the other actors and directors quitting on set due to monster attacks. More specifically, Fred gets put as the director of the movie, and out of nowhere, he just becomes an asshole who values his movie over the life of his friend. And these traits serve no purpose in the movie. At the end of the movie, when Fred and Daphne both get what they want, they're like, nah, we give up all of our fame, we're just gonna go back to solving mysteries again. So what was the point of even starting this plot point that wasn't going to go anywhere? This same this then that character trait can be said for Scooby and Shaggy. They both decide not to accept Scooby snacks from anyone, since it leads to them being bait for monsters, which is something they don't want to do anymore. This is the only character focus in the movie that actually makes sense, since this is something relevant to their characters. But even without Scooby snacks, they end up being bait for monsters anyway, so at the end of the movie, they're just like, yeah, we can go back to eating Scooby snacks now. Yay! Also, Velma's just kind of there. She doesn't get a whole lot to do, which is a shame since she's the only competent character in this movie, but she gets so little focus and screen time, it's just laughable. Another thing is that there isn't really much mystery solving going on. Things just kind of happen in this movie that has nothing to do with the plot, and by the time the gang gets their heads out of their asses and tries to do something, there's only like 10 minutes left in the movie. So there's basically like an hour of antics, followed by 10 minutes of mystery solving. What a waste of time. Plot points come up in this movie just to be resolved in the most dumbest ways possible. Like in the movie, there are two monsters, Headless Horseman and Zombie. The most generic monsters we've seen time and time again, I know. However, these villains have different motives and aren't actually working together. When they get caught, it's revealed that the Headless Horseman was actually a corrupt landlord, developer, who schemed the Brickton Studios manager into selling his studio. But the Zombie is revealed to be Tour Guide Guy. The Tour Guide Guy is revealed to be the long-lost son of the dead Boris actor guy, and he had good intentions when causing havoc at the studio because, in his words, he was trying to get the studio back to its old roots or something. That doesn't excuse that for 6 months he tormented this poor old manager of the place and made a multitude of actors and directors quit working for the company, which made the company more of a living hell than it already was. And he would have continued to do this for much longer if it wasn't for those meddling kids. How does he get redeemed so fucking easily?
Let him go, officer.
You know what really grinds my gears? Racism.
Huh? Overall, Scooby-Doo Haunted Hollywood is an uninspired, unentertaining, advert-heavy mess that lacks anything to make it memorable or interesting. Plot could have worked, but it has so much filler that it drags the film down and makes it less enjoyable. The writing and the characters are just weird. The setting is interesting for a Scooby movie, but I feel like it would have been more interesting if the gang was exploring all of Hollywood, not just one rundown studio. It keeps the movie in a box and makes it feel very limited as a film. But we have to wonder, would the last film be any better? Blowout Beach Bash. This movie was painful. I know I've been going on a tirade about how terrible Haunted Hollywood was, but this movie just takes the cake. In this one, Scooby and the gang go to Blowout Beach to relax and enjoy a nice summer vacation. But of course, it's haunted by paranormal ghost pirates. Ooh. They soon discover that the beach town, which is usually booming, is deserted, and it's later discovered that it's because of ghosts. Look, I'm just going to skip the entire plot because it's very insignificant and bland. Lego Scooby-Doo Blowout Beach Bash suffers from the same problems that made Haunted Hollywood so unbearable, amplified to 100. Haunted Hollywood was at the very least watchable. But for this movie, it's just the most painful Lego movie I've ever seen. It starts off with a 2-minute song where these couples sing and it just makes my ears bleed. You know what? Y'all are gonna feel my pain too. This movie has the same filler problems as Haunted Hollywood. The movie starts off with the conclusion to another mystery that has nothing to do with the main plot, and is based off of another Lego Scooby-Doo set. One positive I will give this movie is that it's not filled to the brim with adverts like Haunted Hollywood was, but at the same time, this isn't a lot of praise for a movie that manages to be worse than its predecessor. This movie has a problem with the same unfunny jokes that plagued the last movie. I feel like this movie intentionally breaks the fourth wall in a lot of ways.
You'll see more portholes. The term porthole applies whether they are on the port side of the ship or the starboard side. There are 36 portholes on this ship, each one with its own unique story.
How could they turn something as scary as a pirate ship into something so boring?
The plot of this film is very predictable and forgettable. The characters in this movie are just straight up non-existent, even more so than Haunted Hollywood was. I just cannot find words to describe how one-dimensional they truly are in this movie. Velma and Fred want to be a part of the cool kids club because they're getting teased for being uncool or something. Then they eventually do become part of the cool kids club and oh god, another song!
When you're feeling uneasy and a little bit queasy, do the jinky.
Turn it off.
They eventually enjoy being cool so much that they don't even care about solving mystery until their friends get kidnapped. Of course, the hotel innkeeper family are the bad guys. It's so predictable. You already established in the first 20 minutes of the movie that they know everything about the ghost pirates, almost to the point where they're obsessed with them, so it's pretty obvious. Like, at least with Night and Terror, they kept me guessing with the monster's identity for a while, but with this movie, it's just blatantly obvious. Velma doesn't even have to explain anything. If you have a brain, you know. I know I'm leaving out a lot here, like the weird tramp jokes.
You're fired.
The pirate ship shitting out treasure, and most of the plot, but there's really not much to this movie. That's why I skipped over most of it when I watched it, because it's just a waste of time. Overall, this movie is just point blank unbearable to sit through, mostly filled to the brim with unfunny dialogue and god-awful chase scenes, and a plot that's been done to death in the Scooby-Doo franchise. I mean it when I say it's the worst. Like, I tried to be fair in this video. I'm not expecting these movies to be masterpieces or anything, since they are for a younger audience, but god! Blowout Beach Bash thankfully was the last array into the Lego Scooby-Doo filmography. But it wouldn't be the last time we saw these characters in Lego form on the big screen, because in the Lego Movie 2, Velma has a brief cameo by herself. It's even explained by her voice actress for lore reasons that Velma's the only Scooby-Doo character in this movie because, quote, in a post-apocalyptic world, Velma would have been the only character to have survived. The other kids wouldn't have made it. End quote. And that's really dark and funny at the same time. Lego's Scooby-Doo era is one of the weirdest eras for Lego and the Scooby-Doo franchise. I think the Lego Scooby-Doo line might have been a little bit more successful if the theme wasn't so generic. There's not a whole lot that screams Scooby-Doo. Maybe if they brought it to include actual villains the franchise is known for, it could have taken off, but we'll never know. As for the movies, there isn't much to say. The sole reason these flicks exist is to advertise LEGO products, which leads to the movies being less of a movie and more of just taking LEGO sets and animating them into some kind of plot. I feel like Nighttime Terror was a decent movie if you could call it a movie. I like how it's short and doesn't overstay its welcome, which is more than what I can say for Haunted Hollywood and Blow Up Beach Bash. But those are the LEGO Scooby-Doo movies. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. I'm Remedies, and I will see you around my llamas in the next video.